this video, I'm going to discuss some of the issues surrounding spark plug maintenance on these old Mercedes V8 engines. These are the M116 and M117 V8s that were built from 1970 to 1991. Now, the basic engine is the same, but the displacement changes, the fuel injection system changes, but one of the things that doesn't change is location and size of spark plug. Now, the type of the spark plug changes, but their spark plugs look like this. They require a 13/16 socket, and they have the long thread like you see here. So if you're going to replace your spark plugs, you're going to need some tools, some wrenches, because you can't get in there with just a normal socket and an extension. You have too much interference there. So you're looking at initially the old D-Jetronic V8 engines from 1970 to 1975, and that moved up to the K Jetronic, which you see here in this 380SL, and then on to the KE Jetronic engines from 1986 to 1991. So if you can get a swivel socket with a longer extension, that seems to work the best. Now, this one here is my favorite, okay? And you see, I went and added a little bit extra length to it just to make it easy. But the reason I like this one is notice how stiff it is. It will swivel, but look at that. It doesn't drop at all. And the other thing I like about this, it has a magnetic insert. So when you put the plug in, look at this. The magnet keeps them from dropping on the ground. And this is something we used to sell, not so much in this configuration, but in this configuration here. And then we were having a hard time getting the magnet inserts, so we ended up having the rubber insert. Now the rubber insert works, but sometimes, you know, the rubber gets swollen and drops out, and you have this problem of losing the plug. So you do have to be careful about that. This one also will swivel and hold. But we can no longer get these for a reasonable price. Prices have gone way up on these, and we found that, you know, people don't want to spend that much money. So we have what I consider now a creative alternative in a 13/16 swivel spark plug socket that you see here. But guess what? Yeah, you already know what's going to happen. Bang. So when you go to stick it down in, this just flops around, and that doesn't work very well. So years ago, I came up with this modification when using universal joints or universal joint spark plug sockets, is you take electrical tape and you wrap it. And the number of times you wrap it will determine how stiff this is. So now if I put this on an extension, you see it'll stay. It doesn't stay perfectly, but at least when I set it down in there, now if I want this to really stay, I can put some more tape on there. But I think you can see what I'm trying to demonstrate here. The tape will stiffen up this universal joint, and even when you get it down in there, it'll still allow it to swivel. It just restricts the amount of travel when you're inserting it on the plug. So currently, this is what I'm offering on my website, because I cannot reasonably get these that I just showed you. So we do offer a quality swivel socket like that, and we're going to give you two extensions. This one for engines where you don't need the reach or the access, and then this really long extension, which is really handy on some of these V8 engines. What you'll need, and we're not going to provide, is just some regular electrical tape, and you can take and wrap right here in the joint. And depending upon where you wrap it, you can wrap it just on this one side, which changes the amount of travel, or you can wrap the whole thing depending upon your access and where you're going to use this swivel socket. Now, this is my solution for not only swivel sockets, but for universal joints, is just get some electrical tape. The reason I like electrical tape is it stretches. So once you wrap it on the universal joint, you can see that you're going to get the stretch and the limited movement that you need to get those spark plugs in and out of your engine. There's another reason I like this style of spark plug socket, and that's it doesn't come off when you pull on it. You go down in the engine compartment, maybe the socket gets stuck on the spark plug, and then the extension pulls out, and it's kind of frustrating to get it back on. And that could be the case here with this arrangement. You're down in there, you're trying to pull this out, and all of a sudden, oh, that slips out, and this is way down in the engine compartment. There's one simple solution. Enter the tape. If you think you're going to be pulling a full 8 set out, and they're going to be tough to get to, I would recommend you just take some electrical tape here. I know this isn't as nice as having it permanent, but you can weld this on if you have a welder, but then you can't use the extension for anything else. I'm kind of getting that gummed up there, but I think now, see, when you get that down in there and you yank on it, it's not going to come out. So that is your solution to a loose extension pulling out of your swivel spark plug socket. There are different ways that you can wrap this. You can wrap it the whole width. You can wrap just one side. I prefer going right down the middle of the joint, and I wrap it about 10 to 12 times around the universal joint. And you can see now that it'll stay straight when you put it down in there. Now, if I add the plug, you're adding a little bit of weight here. And this one does have a rubber insert in it. And you can see it holds it pretty well. If I bend it up, when I go to stick it down in there, it'll keep the bend while I roll it in. But I don't like starting the spark plugs with a socket, because you lose some of the feel, and if this flops around and gets out of a line and you start turning it and you cross thread the threads in the cylinder head, you get a big, big wrench dance. So let me show you what I am going to go ahead and include with this spark plug socket, just because I feel it's so important to have this when you're installing. You can use it to remove the plugs once you get them loose with the socket. But this particular little handy gadget is really critical to prevent cross-threading those threads in your cylinder head. This is my favorite tool. For over 30 years I've been using this. Not this particular hose, but this is my beloved tool for installing spark plugs in gas engines. Doesn't matter whether it's 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, 8-cylinder, whatever. Because this is a tool that will help you to prevent cross-threading and starting the plug crooked in those holes in the cylinder head. This is braided hose. Rubber hose does not work because rubber hose tends to curve, and you need a hose that is perfectly straight to get the plug started. Also, this is very flexible, but when you flex it, it kind of holds its position. So it's much better. You can try to use a rubber hose, but this braided hose is absolutely perfect for this purpose. You put the plug on like this, shove it in, get it down about 1/4 of an inch, and you can see you can drop this down in like this, and then you can sit here and move this and you can feel it. You can literally feel those first couple of threads start, and if you've cleaned the threads and you've put a small dab of nickel antifreeze, yes, I believe in using a small amount of antifreeze, not a lot. This is what gets people in trouble, is they try to smear the threads. That's why antifreeze kind of has a bad reputation. You'll hear this, oh, never use antifreeze on spark plugs. No, you put a small dab of nickel right there, and I include that in some of my kits. And you can go in and feel this. You should be able to start it, and you should be able to turn this almost all the way in by hand. If you can't, you need to back it back out and figure out why. Either the threads are dirty or the threads in the head are all carboned up, and you need to clean that, because if you can't get the spark plug started in almost all the way using this hose, there's something wrong, so you need to look at it. But definitely, every time, any engine that uses spark plugs, this here is a must-have to prevent some really big problems. So as of July 2024, this is what will be included in my M116, M117 engine spark plug replacement kit. These tools right here. You won't get the tape. The tape is something you're going to have to use out of your own stock. And you will receive the socket without any tape on it, even though I've shown it in this video. Now, if you're watching this video in year 2030, don't expect these parts to even still exist. I get this all the time on YouTube. Hey, I saw that kit, you know, why doesn't it include this anymore? And I'm going, do you realize that video was 10 years ago? And things do change, okay? So keep that in mind. You'll get the really long extension, the 3-inch extension, the socket, and I'm going to go ahead and give you this hose as part of the kit because I want to make sure you don't cross-thread those threads.